The movie begins with a boy named Jun Xi. He's super excited because his baby sister is about to be born. He can't wait to meet her, so he sneaks into the nursery at the hospital. But oh boy, a nurse catches him and tells him to scram. Jun Xi is all shocked and nervous. In his hurry to leave, he accidentally drops the nameplate hanging on his sister's crib, and also the nameplate for the baby girl next to her. The nurse fixes the mix-up and puts the right nameplates back. Little did they know, this mix-up is going to change their lives. Fast forward in time, Jun Xi is now a teenager, and so is his sister Xi. They have a pretty great family, loving parents and all that. They're well off too. Xi grows up into a lovely, kind girl. One day it's Xi's birthday, and they're all celebrating. They seem like a happy and close-knit family. Jun Xi gives his sis 4 little mugs with tiny versions of their family members on them. But Xi notices something odd. Her miniature face doesn't quite match her parents' mini faces. She's a bit puzzled. To make everyone smile, Xi plays the piano, and she's really good at it, just like her brother. They all have a good time together. Now, let's switch to another place. There's a busy woman chopping veggies, and her daughter, Xin Ai, is washing some dirty dishes. The mom scolds Xin Ai because she thinks she's not doing a good job and not helping with their simple diner business. This happens a lot, and sometimes her mom forgets it's Xin Ai's birthday. Xin Ai has an older brother named Yu Qiu, and he's not very nice to her. He often asks her for money and acts rude. But there's a bright side. Xin Ai goes to the same school as Xi, and her brother Jun Xi always stands up for her. He protects her from mean kids at school, unlike Yu Qiu, who's always causing trouble. One day, Xi sees Yu Qiu bothering Xin Ai, asking for money and threatening her. Xi is a kind-hearted soul, so she steps in. She gives Yu Qiu some money and tells him to leave Xin Ai alone. But instead of being thankful, Xin Ai gets irritated and thinks Xi is just being annoying. She walks away without saying thanks. So, as Jun Xi was getting ready to ride his bike back home, he showed Xi a super cool music album. Turns out, it was the album of his all-time favorite musician. Xi got all excited and hopped on her bike to chase after her brother, going really fast. But she couldn't handle her bike at that speed and had an accident at a crossroads. They rushed Xi to the hospital right away. While she was in the operating room, her parents discovered something surprising. Xi's blood type didn't match theirs or Jun Xi's. They decided to check her birth records at the hospital and found out that she wasn't actually their biological daughter. Later that evening, they talked about it in Xi's hospital room while she was asleep. But the next morning, Xi told her brother about a dream she had where she overheard their parents talking about her not being their real daughter. Jun Xi didn't want her to worry, so he gave her a gift he had prepared for her recovery, a CD player. But he forgot to put batteries in it, so he went out to buy some. One day, Jun Xi spots his parents talking seriously with a middle-aged lady in the hospital hallway. He listens in and learns something shocking. It turns out his little sister, Xi, was switched with another baby when they were born. That means Xi isn't his real sister. But even though they know the truth, Jun Xi's parents decide not to tell Xi because they love her so much. They also feel sorry for Xin Ai, their actual biological daughter, who's been living apart from them. Meanwhile, Xin Ai's mom can only watch Xi, her biological daughter, from afar, unable to hug her or meet her properly. After some time, Xi gets better and comes back home, where everything seems perfect with her loving family. But then, out of the blue, Xin Ai shows up with her birth documents, proving she's Jun Xi's parents' real daughter. Xin Ai thinks she's being treated unfairly because her biological parents seem to like Xi more. She says she's had a tough life with her mom and older brother, who were always mean to her. Xin Ai feels like all the happiness and luck that Xi had over the past dozen years should have been hers. When Xin Ai said those hurtful words, Jun Xi scolded her and even asked her to leave. But surprisingly, it was Xi who decided to go away. Jun Xi chased after her, and they reached a hill. There, Xi cried and told Jun Xi that she wished she could be a tree, staying in one place and not being separated from her family. Jun Xi felt really sad hearing this, so he carved their names on a nearby tree trunk. He convinced Xi to come back home since it was getting late. Finally, Xi agreed and went home with Jun Xi. The next day, Xi made a tough choice. She wanted to leave Jun Xi and her parents to find her biological mother and live with her. She said her goodbyes early in the morning, so Jun Xi and his parents wouldn't see her go. But when she got there, her real mother kicked her out, saying she'd have a miserable life with her. Not long after, Jun Xi's mom found out about Xi leaving, and she hurried to catch up with her, trying to persuade her to come back home. Jun Xi's mom talked to Xi's mom about her plan to move to the United States with both Xi and Xin Ai and take care of them together. But Xi didn't want to go. She hugged her real mom and said she wanted to stay with her. So Jun Xi's family moved to the United States without Xi. A few years later, Jun Xi, all grown up, decided to come back to China to find his dear sister. He went to the neighborhood where Xi's mom used to live, but she had moved away years ago. Meanwhile, Xi had grown into a beautiful woman and worked as a nurse in a hospital. She also had a side job as a property salesperson. One day, while on a work trip with a coworker to meet a client, she met a guy named Han who forgot his electronic money card and had trouble paying. Xi stepped in to help him out. She eventually managed to sell a property with her excellent communication skills, even though the client seemed a bit too interested in her because of her looks. When Xi got home, she found her mom in tears because Yu Chao had asked for money for gambling and even threatened to cause trouble if she didn't give it to him. So when Xi saw what was happening with Yu Chao, she gave him some money and told him to leave right away. Her mom felt really guilty because she thought Xi's life had become tough after choosing to stay with her. But Xi didn't regret her decision at all. She promised her mom that she would make a lot of money to make her happy. Now the scene shifts to a meeting room in a property company. There's this guy named Han, the owner's son, who is more interested in playing mobile games on his phone than paying attention in the meeting. He's also curious about the kind woman who paid his parking fee and wants to find her. Turns out, Han and Jun Tai were friends in the United States, so he's thrilled to learn that Jun Xi has returned to China. Han manages to track down Xi and tries to become friends with her. One night, Han takes Jun Xi to a nightclub and invites Xi and her friends too. He's impressed by Xi's kindness when she helps a maid servant pour a drink. As the night goes on, Han plays a song on the piano that Jun Xi and Xi used to play as teenagers. Xi gets drawn in, and Han tries to charm her and asks her out on a date, but Xi ends up leaving him. Xi goes back to the hill where she and Jun Xi carved their names on a tree. She still holds onto the CD player that Jun Xi gave her. It's clear that she hasn't forgotten Jun Xi and his family, and she misses them a lot. Xi thinks back to the good times they had together, but she feels like she means nothing to them now. One day, while working as a waitress, Xi has an argument with one of Han's friends, who disrespects her just because of her job. This makes Han realize that Xi is actually a good person. The friend apologizes to her, but Xi doesn't pay him much attention. Instead, she goes to a roadside service shop to fix her broken CD player. Coincidentally, Jun Xi also visits the same shop to repair a CD player that looks like Xi's. He figures out that it belongs to Xi and hurries to find her, thinking she can't be too far from the shop. So, after a long time apart, Jun Xi finally found Xi again. They decided to stop by a coffee shop to catch up, but Xi seemed distant and not very friendly towards Jun Xi. That night, Xi felt frustrated and went out to have a drink by herself. Jun Xi kept an eye on her from a distance. When she got all drunk, Xi poured out all her anger and sadness to Jun Xi and then passed out. Jun Xi brought her back to their old house. The next day, Jun Xi took Xi to a cabin by the coast. It turned out that the cabin held all the memories from when they used to live together. Plus, there was a birthday present from Jun Xi for Xi every year. Xi was so happy to see that Jun Xi had never forgotten her all this time. As the days went by, Jun Xi and Xi started spending more and more time together, doing all sorts of fun things, and love started to grow between them, little by little. Now Jun Xi already had a fiancée named Yumi back in the United States. One day, Yumi decided to surprise Jun Xi by coming to China. She asked Han to pick her up at the airport and invited her to meet Jun Xi and Xi. When Xi found out that Yumi was Jun Xi's fiancée, she felt jealous. Xin Ai had just returned from the United States, and she didn't seem too happy about Xi being back in the picture. She told Xi openly that she didn't want her to re-enter their family's life, because she didn't want her family's attention and love to go back to Xi. It turns out that Xin Ai's return to China was the reason Jun Xi learned that their mom had gotten sick while they were in the United States because they missed Xi so much. Turns out Xin Ai used to date Han, but now he's ignoring her because he's fallen for Xi. Han used to visit Xi at her workplace and brought her food. He felt bad for Xi, who worked really hard to support her family. Han even took Antai shopping and brought her to a nursing home, where he often made donations and cheered up the elderly folks there. Han shared with Antai that he came from a troubled family, and even though he had lots of money, he missed the love of his parents. Han wanted Antai to be his wife and asked for Jun Xi's blessing because he knew about their history, but Jun Xi didn't seem too thrilled about it. Still, Han didn't give up and tried his best to win Anxi's heart. Xin Ai noticed how close Han and Antai were and got really jealous, so she visited Antai at her place. But then something unexpected happened. Xin Ai was reunited with Antai's mother, who had raised her since she was a baby. They were both really moved to see each other again. Even though Xin Ai wasn't her biological daughter and they had their share of arguments, her mother loved her a lot. And Antai decided to leave the house so Xin Ai could be with her mom. On her way out, she bumped into Jun Xi's parents, who had come to China to find her. The reunion of children and parents who had been separated for so long was incredibly touching. So, after that, Antai, feeling like she didn't deserve love from Jun Xi's family, decided to sell all the gifts she got from him. She even went to a nightclub and acted like she wasn't a good person. Antai did all of this on purpose, hoping that Jun Xi, his family, and Han would hate her. Things got chaotic at the nightclub, and suddenly, Antai passed out. It turns out she had been quietly battling leukemia and hadn't told her family about it. The only way for her to survive was to find a bone marrow donor. Her mom felt really sad and guilty because she hadn't realized her daughter was so sick after making her work so hard. At first, Antai didn't want treatment because she thought she didn't deserve to live. Her health got worse, but then, at a critical moment, she mentioned Jun Xi's name. When Han found out that Antai was in love with Jun Xi, he decided to let her go, as did Yumi, who gave up her fiancé for Antai. Antai made it through the critical phase, and her whole family, along with Han and Yumi, came to see her. Xin Ai, who had been rude to her before, apologized and Antai forgave her, treating her like a sister. Antai was overjoyed to know that everyone truly cared about her and wanted her to be happy. The movie ends with Antai marrying Jun Xi in front of his entire family and Han. So the moral of the movie is don't mix up nameplates in the nursery, or you might end up with a new family, a surprise fiancé, and a battle with leukemia. And remember, love and forgiveness can heal even the most complicated family dynamics.